Okay, so good evening. This is Doug Lucenti, chair, well, sort of chair of hats for a little bit longer. And permit me to confirm that the members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. When I call your name, if you could please just respond in the affirmative so that we know you can be heard. And we start with Emily Mitchell.
I am present.
Linda's not here yet. Jim Hutchinson,
Here.
Charles Hornig,
Present.
Gary Taylor,
Present.
Ephraim Flint, I don't see. Steve Hagan, I don't see. Margaret Copey,
Here.
I don't see Glenn. I do see Amber Goodspeed.
I'm present.
Great, thank you. I don't see Simone, and I don't see any of the other. Oh, Glenn's here right now, so let me admit Glenn. Just trying to get Glenn to join, and well, Mark Sandine.
Yes.
All right, excellent. And Glenn Karnowski, Glenn, if you could just say if you can, oh, he's still connecting. Hi, Glenn, if you can hear us, could you just say that you're able to be heard and you can hear us? Okay, we'll come back to Glenn in a moment. Okay, so the time is now 7:04 p.m. on Thursday, December 21st, 2023, and I call this open meeting of Hats to order. Please note this meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with Massachusetts state law, allowing public bodies to continue holding meetings remotely. For this meeting, Hats is convening by video conference via the application Zoom as posted on each of the 4 towns' websites, identifying how the public may join. Some brief reminders before we begin the meeting. This meeting is being recorded, so please be aware others may see you, and anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please remember to mute your phone or computer if you're not speaking, and any votes taken during this meeting will be by a roll call vote. And our first item on the agenda this afternoon, after we go through the introductions, is we have minutes to approve from the June 22nd, 2023 meeting. So if, thank you, Emily, for taking those minutes. If there's any questions anyone wants to bring up, or any changes anyone wants to bring up.
One that we should probably make, Doug, is there's somebody not identified in the guest list. Jean next to Margaret in person, last name.
Margaret corrected that for me. Hang on. Let's see if I can find it.
Was it Gene Krieger?
You may not have the most recent.
Yeah,
version
I
of
think it
minutes.
was.
Okay, I thought the one I sent out today had that listed correctly.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
that's
Jane
okay.
Krieger.
Any other changes that anyone noticed in the minutes? Okay, hearing none, I'll move that we approve the meeting minutes for June 22nd, 2023. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded by a roll call vote. Jim Hutchinson,
Aye.
Emily Mitchell,
Aye.
Doug Lucenti is a yes, even though I'm going to have Mark Sandine vote as well, just because he will officially be the person for Lexington shortly.
Yes.
Mark, all right, and then I don't have Linda here yet, so.
Doug, I think actually you're approving the minutes because you were present. I don't think Mark was present.
He was not, no, it's, we've gone through this with it's one of those weird situations. I actually talked to town council about not this, but a similar situation. And the advice was for others that may want to know, if someone reasonably believes that those are the minutes that were taken, then they can vote on them. If they don't believe it is, then shouldn't vote on it.
Okay.
Anyway,
and-
so that, yeah, Gary?
Doug,
Oh,
no, it's
sorry,
Charles.
Charles,
So I
sorry,
just want to
Charles.
ask that if people could send me the approved minutes without the draft marker in them, I can put them on the website.
Yeah, and Charles, I did see your note. I will get you a copy of the ones for both of these after this meeting is over.
Okay.
Good, thank you. Okay, so we're gonna move on to, as I indicated
I don't
in
think
an
you.
email. Oh, Gary, I'm sorry.
I don't think you went through everybody. I will say, aye.
Yeah, well, it's just for the voting members.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So I think everyone knows I sent an email out that I'm stepping down as chair, stepping down as representative for Lexington because I am getting involved in our 250th commission for Lexington, and it's a pretty heavy load. So Mark Sandine, who is a colleague of mine on the select board, will be taking over. And so at this point, I'm going to take any nominations for a new chair for the HATS committee. Does anyone want to make any nominations?
I want to nominate Mark Sandine so that he doesn't nominate me instead.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Okay, moved and seconded by a roll call vote. Jim?
Hutchinson, aye.
Okay, Emily Mitchell?
Aye.
Okay, I'm yeah, Mark Sandine?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm a yes, even though I'm technically done. So I'll hand this over at this point to Mark. And I enjoyed my time here. I will be here for the rest of the meeting, here to help if there's any need. And at this point, I'll turn the control over to Mark. And Mark, if you need me to share anything, please let me know.
Okay, well, thank you, Doug, for all the hand holding and getting me ready for this meeting, and looking forward to it. So very happy to be part of the Hanscom Area Towns Association. So the next item on our agenda is the municipal updates. And so I would ask, Jim, do you have any municipal updates, highlights, projects, initiatives?
Sure. I'll go briefly and would be happy to take questions from anybody who wants more detail on any of it. Lincoln's been very active in the past, since our last meeting, with two big topics and a couple of other ones that have been a little bit more in the background. The big one for us has been the Housing Choice Act efforts of our working group to come up with a strategy that voters could accept for that effort to create more multifamily housing in the Eastern Massachusetts area by creating some, the by right zoning areas. Gary can go into any amount of detail you want on this one. But we did have a process. We did get a bunch of different proposals put forward in front of residents, 5 to be exact. We took the innovative approach of allowing a multiple choice vote at a special town meeting just back in December, on December 2nd. And the winner was so-called option C, which was an option to have a HCA zone that's very centered around our train station. So we're not sprinkling it around the town like you're allowed to in HCA, but have it pretty nicely, tightly around the station, sort of in the spirit of the legislation, we believe. So that's one big thing we were preoccupied with. Another one was a community center proposal in town that we worked on. Again, offered voters a multiple choice of a bunch of different options we could pursue at different price points. And a little to my surprise, the town at special town meeting on December 2nd went for the full price option. $25 million community center. So that's not a vote to approve the funding for it. That's a vote to pursue the planning for such a center. And the vote on the funding for it will come at our regular annual town meeting in March. So we'll see if the support for that still remains strong at that point. As you all have experienced, building costs are ridiculous. These costs are good, you know, I wouldn't say 50% higher. I'd say more than 50% higher than what we were contemplating even just 5 years ago. But what can you do about it? The feeling is if you don't do it now, it's going to be even more expensive if you wait. So we did get that approved. Other smaller initiatives in town, we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative that's going on in town, and we're trying to get our processes and our all of our town related activities more inclusive and more diverse. We have a consultant there making recommendations to us, and it'll be a multi-year kind of effort to implement some of those recommended changes and push all that forward. And finally, we have a climate change initiative, which is probably the most agreed upon thing in Lincoln. It's like 90% voter approval for anything climate, related in terms of helping reduce climate change impacts. And so that's chunking along and occupying our green energy committee quite nicely. So those are the big initiatives in town. And Gary, did you want to add anything for me on the housing or anything?
No, the only thing I would say is that we just recently had a special town meeting in which all the things that Jim has discussed were disputed, discussed, whatever. And one of the things that's come out of it, and it might be interesting for all of our towns to think about it, is changes to town meeting process and how and participation, and whether or not there's anything that can be done to broaden participation at town meeting, and all kinds of things like, you should divide it between, substantive discussions on one day and votes on another day, or we let people participate remotely. But I wonder whether all of us could discuss whether or not there's, anything going on in all of our towns about what's the best way to proceed with local governance, particularly around town meeting.
Yeah, let me add a couple more words on that, Gary. That's a great thing to bring up because we might get some advice from people here. A bunch of the things that have been suggested to us, we've already implemented, things like using consent calendar pretty thoroughly to try to get some of the routine business over quickly at town meeting. Having live streaming of the meeting so that people who want to show up just for the vote can watch the meeting at home and come in when they think they need to. We have overflow capacity in our gymnasium, so we can handle quite a variation in number of people attending. A couple other things, but the two that are sort of contentious that Gary may be referring to are, first, remote participation, like being able to vote remotely. And the second one is what some people call Australian ballot, which is where you separate the deliberation on one day and the voting on a second different day. And the opinion that we've gotten so far from talking to other towns and to council is that both of those, remote voting and Australian ballot, would require a home rule petition to the state, because we believe they're not aligned with town meeting laws for Massachusetts. So if any of you have information to the contrary or have efforts in either of those areas or a related area, we would love to hear about it. Because we do have residents who have expressed interest in that. We also have residents who love town meeting the way it is and want the town to get together and talk and, you know, share opinions and deliberate together. So it's not like this is a uniformly desired change that we're talking about here.
Well, thank you. And Emily, what do you have for a report?
Sure. Well, a lot of what I'm talking about sounds familiar to what's going on in Lincoln. We are also in the midst of the MBTA community's housing choice zoning questions for Bedford. We are an adjacent community, so we have the December 31st, 24 deadline to enact new zoning. The planning board's been working for several months, having a lot of public meetings, public hearings, looking at different options, and they haven't come to a consensus yet. So there was a special planning board meeting last night where it was hoped that they were going to decide this is the place, these are the area or areas that will bring to town meeting. But they didn't come to consensus as a board, so they're continuing that to early January. So lots of good ideas, lots of maybe not helpful attitudes about, you know, why do we need to grow, and, you know, what are the impacts, and you know, there are some folks in town who are looking at it very negatively. There are other folks in towns who you know, sort of understand the situation that we're in, both as a community and as a state. So that'll be certainly a lot of the focus of discussions in the first quarter of 2024. The other big thing that we're working on is our new fire station. So we are planning to bring a warrant article for construction costs for the new fire station to town meeting in March. We have been working with an architect and an owner's project manager for several months, and the design has been refined over and over again with our fire station building committee. The site that we have acquired is in the historic district, so we also need to be presenting to our historic district commission, who would be able to grant approval to demolish the structure that's there and also approve the design of the new station. So we've been meeting with them as well. They've been part of the design process. The cost is still unknown. The plans went to the estimators last week, expecting to get those back early January. So then we'll have a better sense of what kind of budget we're looking at. When we first thought about this 2.5 years ago, I think we had a figure of like maybe 17 million. And we know it will be more than that. We don't know how much more, but so that'll be a big capital ask in March. We have some new staff. We have a new town manager. Have we met since September, October? So we have a new town manager. His name is Matt Hansen. He comes to us from Tingsboro. So he's been in place since end of September. We also have a couple new hires that are new positions in town that we're excited about. So we hired an energy and sustainability manager who just started last week. That was a position that was funded a couple years ago, and we just had a hard time you know, finding the right person to fill that role. So that's someone who will take on kind of an overarching look at our net zero plans, how that's working with our municipal buildings, and what kind of outreach we can do with private homeowners and businesses as well to improve our sustainability as a town. And then we also, in our rec department, we hired a therapeutic recreation specialist to help make more of the rec department offerings, particularly for school-age kids, more inclusive, more open to more kids who might need some specific support. And that's something that's been a long time coming. You know, I would say for 20 years, we've been talking about, you know, we need to have programs that more kids can participate in. And so now we have somebody who really will help us facilitate that. I had to smile when you were talking about the town meeting procedures and processes, because we've had all those same conversations in Bedford. We actually did a sort of non-scientific survey right after town meeting last March to get people's opinions about, you know, date and time. We moved things around during the COVID years. We had some Saturday mornings outside on the turf as opposed to our usual Monday nights in the auditorium. So we had a pretty robust response. I think we had like 800 respondents with absolutely no consensus. So, you know, maybe 30% was like Monday night, 7 p.m. It's what's in the charter. That's what we're doing. That's what we need to do. Everybody like all, and then you had about 30% saying anything but that. And I definitely want Saturday morning, but then we had a specific question about what times would you prefer? And that was not one of the top 3 times. So a lot of data, not a lot of direction. But yes, we also have people who would love to have, let's have the talking on one night, and then so I can just show up and vote another night. And our understanding is also that that is not aligned with town meeting procedure in the state or in our own charter. So that is most of the news from Bedford.
Well, thank you so much. So for a Lexington update, I have a couple very specific Hanscom hats-oriented things. The Lexington Select Board approved and mailed a copy, thank you, Doug, of the Hanscom expansion letter that was approved by HATS to Massport, the governor's office, DOER, and Lexington's legislative delegation. I think I've got everybody, but and the Lexington Select Board has also approved funding of $6,250 for the ultrafine particulate matter air pollution study that was proposed by HFAC. And the hope is that this project will be funded in time to complement the draft environmental impact report, which, at least from our sources, does not consider this type of environmental impact. And I think we're hearing that the draft environmental impact report might come out in mid-January, as early as mid-January.
Yep.
On a little fun note, Lexington completed construction of a bus shelter in Lexington earlier today for the MBTA 6276 route that goes to Hanscom Field. And Emily, you were saying you were smiling during the Jim's conversation about town meeting. We've had very similar conversations. It made me smile as well. We had our first town meeting in hybrid format. So when COVID first hit, we had a virtual town meeting. Everybody was virtual. And then we went back to full in person. And so this last town meeting we had was the first one in hybrid format. And one select board member, this is the smiling part, I won't say who, in what I think is a first in the country, was able to cast a vote in town meeting from 35,000 feet. So a lot of you have talked about MBTA. So we have some good news here from Lexington. The governor and the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities announced on December 12th that Lexington zoning was in full compliance with Section 3A of the MBTA Communities Act, and that Lexington meets or exceeds all the requirements of Section 3A and the guidelines. And also related to HATS area, our neighbors in HATS, we're making good progress on the Bedford Street, Hartwell Avenue Complete Streets project. The town has had a public information session on November 16th that's presenting the roadway cross sections and alternatives for Bedford Street and Hartwell Avenue. And we're very interested in what our neighboring communities have, what their opinions are of these proposals. So this particular presentation was focused on vehicle lanes and bike lanes and sidewalks and pathways. And I can put in the meeting minutes the information about how to view the presentation or go to the town's virtual meeting room where you can make comments about these proposals. So we would be particularly interested in hearing from our neighboring communities if you think there's anything that you would like to say about that. And finally, Lexington's also created a transportation management overlay district for the Hartwell Avenue corridor to facilitate multimodal transportation options and improve traffic management. But for all three of these things, Charles is really the expert in our town. And so I would ask to turn things over to Charles to say a little bit about MBTA and TMOD.
Well, sure. Thanks, Mark. You know, MBTA was
And
a lot of work.
And the leader of a lot of these efforts.
MBTA was a lot of work leading up to town meeting back in April, but it was also a lot of work for the planning board over the summer. We wrote a whole pile of regulations. Lexington's zoning philosophy is to delegate a lot of the detail to regulations. So we had to update our site plan review regulations to handle housing. We mainly used it on commercial developments in the past. So that was a big effort. We have the regulations all in place. We have not had anyone file for site plan review yet, but we're expecting it momentarily. The transportation management overlay, that's something we put in place back in 2010, but with that overlay district in our zoning comes a district plan. which is where we put in all of the transportation demand management requirements for the district and the mitigation requirements for the district. And we did our first update this year, since 2010, changed the way mitigation is calculated. The mitigation fees are calculated, tightened up the TDM requirements, and that's in place. And we've got projects moving forward under the new one. There's a large lab building going up on Bedford Street at 440 Bedford. Let's see, and that's all I have.
Okay, fantastic. So I have two more things riffing off of Jim Hutchinson's remarks. Lexington has adopted the specialized energy code, and that will go into effect on January 1st. And I'm told Lexington will receive official notification very soon, I'm told, that we have been accepted into the 10 Communities demonstration program that would require all new construction to be all electric, fossil fuel free in the future. But probably the biggest news in Lexington right now is that the school building committee has selected our design team for what is probably the biggest project in a generation, which is Lexington's new high school project. It's expected to be 470,000 square feet, and they're saying it's going to cost about $1,000 a square foot. So you can do the math. It's a lot of money. The initial design targets for the building are to be all electric, using ground source heat pumps, and generate enough solar energy on site to power the entire building. We're having regular meetings. The school building committee met today. There was meetings yesterday. This is going to consume a lot of energy in town for the next, 6 years, Doug, I think. And so that's where we are. Those are the updates I have from Lexington.
Is the high school going to be at the same site or it's in a different location?
It's at the same site. I should say, the MSBA process is we're in the feasibility study where we're required to look at everything. So it's highly likely that it'll be in the same site. That's what we're sort of focusing on, but we're required in the feasibility study to look at all options.
Okay. Bedford did also adopt the specialized code at our special town meeting. I should have mentioned that. So yay, everybody.
We did, Lincoln did too, and Mark, we also just got notice that we were accepted into the 10-town pilot for the no fossil fuels.
Yes, so fantastic. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is Hanscom updates. So do we have any updates from Massport, from Hanscom Air Force Base, or Hanscom Field?
Hi,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Amber.
Hi. Yeah, I did have a project update at the last Hanscom Field Advisory Commission meeting. I had updates on our, we have a salt storage shed that's in the middle of the parking lot that's being relocated off of the parking lot area, and a bid will be posted in January for that project. The other update that I had was about signature flight support. The old fixed base operator facility has been complete, the demolition has been completed. So obviously we ran out of time weather-wise, so final paving of that area will take place in the spring of 2024. I had an update. So the last update that I had was it's called the Vegetation Management Plan. Every 5 years, we map out areas where trees might grow in to be obstructions in the way of safely moving aircraft in and out of the airfield. So there's a process called photogrammetry, and then the project team develops a plan, evaluate the results, and develop a plan for vegetation management for the following 5 years. So they've completed the photogrammetry and they're currently developing the plan. So I would anticipate that sometime in the first quarter of 2024, they'll reach out to each of your respective conservation commissions and ask for some time before the commissions to propose the next 5-year plan. And that was what I had for projects.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else who has an update? I saw Terry. I missed.
Oh, hello.
Yes,
Oh,
who's
it's Glenn Karnowski here. Can you hear me
oh,
all?
Glenn? Fantastic, Glenn. Terry, we'll get to you in a second.
Sorry about that. Zoom is being a little sticky tonight for me for some reason. Not sure what's going on here. So I'll keep it short. I only have a couple of items here. So the first is, of course, everyone knows we're working on our the gate project, the Sartain Gate. So I'll give you an update here. The project is now about 70% complete. All the new buildings are up and their exteriors are complete. Work on the interiors is well underway, doing painting, ceiling grids, wall, floor tiling, countertops, all that's go wall fixtures, all this stuff's being installed right now. The pavement on the roadways throughout the site have had their base and binder coats installed, and they just started working on the curbing this past Tuesday. So things are moving along really well with the gate project. We anticipate the project will probably be complete this spring or possibly early summer. Forgive my throatiness, covering from a little bit of a respiratory thing here. Excuse me. And the other big piece of news, we have a new AFL CMC commander. That's the Air Force Life Cycle Management Center, which is our next higher headquarters out at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. Lieutenant General Donna Shipton recently received her confirmation from Congress, and she officially takes on the role of the Air Force Life Cycle Management Center commander tomorrow. She's the first woman to fill the seat since the center was activated in July of 2012. Previously, she was the military deputy office of the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics. She's scheduled to visit Hanscom sometime early next year, and there'll be a public State of the Air Force Life Cycle Management Center event that you folks can attend if you wish. We'll share more information on this as the dates gets closer and as we firm up the details. So ought to be a very interesting event with a lot of good information. So, and that's really my highlights, pending your questions.
So Glenn, do you have any needs for interaction with any of the towns regarding these items?
At the moment, no. That was just FYI information. And like I said, for the new commander, she's being appointed, and I know she's going to visit. And once we get more information, we'll gladly share that with you.
Well, thank you. Any other Hanscom updates before we get back to Terry? Okay, Terry, I'm sorry for missing you.
No problem.
I had
No
multiple
problem.
screens going and I saw the hand out of the corner of my eye right after I said Hanscom. So
Well,
I'm
no
assuming you
problem.
have a municipal update.
Right. So I know Linda's not here, so I'm not really prepared, but I can say that some of the other members triggered my memory that in Concord, we are working on the MBTA Communities Act. We have our moderator setting up a task force to look at town meeting. A lot of the same issues you already talked about. Our middle school is construction is proceeding really well. We have an article at town meeting to revamp the whole stretch code, and we're awaiting the fossil-free pilot approval from the state. But I do have a Hanscom update as well, and that is that Concord did a public records request on the for all documents concerning the North Airfield expansion project. And we have received hundreds of pages of documents so far, and that we're going to be getting more. And I can share those documents with this group if they are public record. They're the request for proposal, some of the memorandum of agreement with the developers. If people are interested, I can send them to one person such as you, Mark, or Doug. I have Doug's email. I don't have yours, Mark.
Okay.
But if you want to send them out to the group, you can.
All right. The first thing that comes to my mind is, and maybe this is a question for Charles, but for the group to start, there's a technical question. Would we want to put it on our webpage? And so the question to Charles is that possible? And then than for the rest of the group. Is that something we might want to put on our webpage?
Not having seen it, I have some concern that it would be too much
Right.
data for the
Right.
particular hosting plan we have.
Okay,
I agree. I think you should take a look first because I started reading through it and there's a lot of stuff there and more to come. So I think you might want to put some of it on your website, but you have to sort through.
I mean, once I get it, I can take a look at how big it is and see how much space we can reasonably use.
so
But there may be better choices.
Terry, can I ask
Jim
you?
and Emily, what are your thoughts? Jim?
I was going to ask if Terry, if you have talked to the Stop Private Jet Aviation group about sharing the information with them.
Are you talking about HFAC?
No, not HVAC. I'm talking about a group of
The yellow sign people.
the yellow sign people. Maybe Margaret has the right name for them. I can't.
Oh, the JPE,
Stop private jets everywhere, I think is
Right,
their.
I think they know about it. I can let them know again. And yeah, maybe that's the best place to put it on a website, to put it on their website. Or
They might,
both.
they might be willing to host it if we don't want to host it.
Margaret? Margaret, you're muted.
You're muted, Margaret. We're not good at lip reading just yet.
Chris Elliott got it, I believe, from Terry, and he distributed it to the HVAC committee. So I've gotten them. Yes, I know they're these huge documents. So HVAC has gotten them, but I don't know where else they went.
Yeah,
Okay.
and HVAC doesn't have a web presence, so that wouldn't be an option.
Yeah, I was
Right.
just trying to get somebody to post it so that we don't all have to sprinkle it around to everybody who wants it.
Emily, do you have any questions or comments?
I don't have any objection. I mean, everything that they've received is a public document, so it can be shared publicly. I think it's just a logistical question.
Okay, and Gary, did I see you raising your hand?
No, I was just wondering whether there was a cloud option here that would make it available to everybody.
Yeah, that's what we're all looking for, Gary. Somebody to host it.
Okay,
Well, should I send it to Doug since I have his email and he can forward it to you, Mark, and everyone else?
That
Doug?
works for me. I can forward it off and I'll share Mark's email with you, Terry.
Thank you.
Doug, I'll take a copy of it too, or a link to a cloud folder if you can do that.
Yeah, no, I would love to have a link too, as well.
Okay. So this sort of segues, at least for me, into our next agenda item, which is discussion of future meeting topics, which it sounds like one of them may be to consider this material. So I don't have the history of hats, so I would lean on the folks here who have been with hats for a lot longer. What could you suggest some future meeting topics that we should be covering in future
I mean,
agenda?
One of the things that's been good about this venue is the ability to have guest speakers. So at past meetings, years ago, we had the head of Massport came to talk to the towns about their plans for Hanscom. We've talked about doing like a roundtable of department heads or representatives from each of the towns. So like, what's your DPW doing? What's your DPW doing to sort of share best practices? It also sounds like town meeting is an item of interest among all of these towns. So having town council or someone come to talk to us all about options and things that we're hearing might be another topic of interest for the future.
Jim, any thoughts?
I would second the motion to do something about town meeting innovations that's topical for Lincoln, and it's sort of a little bit of a issue where residents see what's going on in another town and are bothered if other towns are more advanced technologically than our town is, so.
Yeah.
I think that
And there
maybe,
might be somebody from like Mass Moderators who could come to talk to us.
yes, I believe so. I believe that they have some materials that might be good to disseminate among us to give us all the same kind of background information that we could find useful. So I think that would be a fun event to organize.
And can I just jump in? I remind you that Lexington has representative town meeting and you guys all have open town meetings. So there's some different processes or different.
Yeah.
Um,
You have some more options.
well,
Yeah, so
right.
Lexington might not be as interested in this discussion as the rest of us are. You're
Well,
right.
we would be interested in, the hybrid meeting, for example, which I thought went off very well, by the way. I don't know what Charles and Mark and Doug thought about that.
But Margaret, the point is that you guys are allowed to do that. And we're not.
Oh, okay.
Without doing a home rule petition, we're not allowed to do that. So the residents can get all excited about it because everybody's gotten used to Zoom and hybrid meetings for regular meetings. But for town meeting, we're not allowed to do that yet.
Well, when you were talking about voting, it reminded me that town meeting members in Lexington can vote remotely, but we get a sign-in code that's unique to us so that we can vote remotely. And that, I don't know how you would do that in an open town meeting, how you would have people.
I can tell you there is technology to do that, but they're not allowed to sell it to towns in Massachusetts that have open town meeting because of the bylaws in Massachusetts.
Interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
So they have the technology. I mean, the technology is not that hard actually, but you can't use it because currently Massachusetts law says that open town meeting towns have to have people come to the meeting to vote.
Okay.
Oh, that's interesting.
So could I move on to
Yeah.
Our partners at Hanscom Air Force Base and Massport? Do either one of you have some suggestions of things that we should be discussing on future meetings as a topic? How about you, Glenn? Do you have anything that you think we should be putting on our agenda?
Nothing immediately comes to mind, although typically what happens, of course, is our base commander usually comes and talks to you folks. Of course, Colonel Stevens did. That's going away a little way back, but I know that Colonel Enrique is probably definitely interested. I'll have to check with her and see if she still wants to. Probably, but she's coming to the end of her tenure too, so she'll be swapping and she'll be leaving command come this summer. So I don't know if it's worth entertaining her, but let me. I'll ask her the question and I'll get back to you. So.
Okay. And Amber.
We do have an acting CEO, but I think it would probably be best if we waited until we have a permanent CEO in place before we invited them to the meeting.
Okay.
And the other thing that I can think of isn't Hanscom related, but Simone from the park might be she's usually a good speaker.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I'll second that. Simone's good people.
So Amber, if I could just ask a follow-up question, you say you have an interim CEO. Do you have any timeline on when you might have the final appointment?
I'm sorry, I don't have one tonight, but at our next meeting, I'll get an update for you.
Okay. How about from non-voting members? Anybody have some suggestions?
Yeah. What I'm wondering if we shouldn't have, and I know that Bedford's not as involved as the other three towns about the 200 plans for the 250th.
Yeah, we were involved. I came to some early meetings and then I stopped being invited. So
oh no.
It's okay. I mean, we don't do as much. We have pole capping and that's sort of it. But yeah.
Margaret, on that one, I actually had a request that Hats not get involved with the 250th.
Really?
Because we have a 250th committee.
Yes.
I don't want to duplicate.
No, I wouldn't. No, I wasn't thinking about getting involved. I was thinking about having them come and tell us what's going on.
Oh.
Sort of like, but that would be maybe later in the year when they have their plans for 2025 more solidified. It would be nice to hear that. The other thing,
I'm kind of okay. Go ahead, Margaret.
Yeah, I had suggested last time inviting our elected representatives, state representatives, to come to a meeting. to talk about what's going on, about all these issues that we talk about, housing, environment, et cetera. Give us an update on what's going on at the State House.
Yeah, we used to do that pretty regularly. So, and
Yeah.
it's been a while.
Yeah. The other thing we've had in the past, we've had the sort of, maybe not the head of the MBTA, but, you know, somebody high up in the MBTA come out and talk to us about what's going on with that in regard to our towns.
You're talking transportation, not the
That would be a
MBTA.
transfer. Yeah, it would be a ground. Yeah, grants. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Other
I'm trying to
people,
think what else in the past we're you know, we were lucky one time some years ago, we had the lieutenant governor come. And we had a good turnout for that meeting.
okay, so how about Gary? Any thoughts you have?
No, I know, yeah, other than what we've discussed today, I mean, we've covered a whole range of issues and yeah, I don't have anything additional to it.
Oh, one more, housing initiatives in the 4 towns.
Well, I mean, we've all talked about housing initiatives in the 4 towns. I mean, I think it's the kind of thing we should be continually talking about because we're all under the HCA
Yeah.
mandate. And
Charles, any ideas?
People have had lots of ideas. I don't, I'm just trying to think of what's going to be hot from my side of things this year. Sign bylaws. You wouldn't be interested in that. That's probably our hot issue for the spring.
Okay.
So no, I don't have anything right now for you.
Hey,
And we
Mark,
have to essentially rewrite it.
Mark, did we cover more basic stuff? Like, are we going to talk about the draft environmental impact report that the North Airfield project is producing? Or are we
I
going to
think
leave that to HVAC?
Well, I think there's kind of 2 different aspects to the draft environmental impact report. There's probably a technical aspect to it, sort of about the actual environment, but there may be a political thing about how we are thinking about responding to this as a group of select board members. When it comes out, I'm told there's a very short time period and we may want to be coordinating within that time period some sort of response.
That's what I was getting at, Mark. I think maybe HVAC is already pretty set up to do the technical commentary and evaluation. I know that Chris Elliott is pretty on top of that kind of stuff. Maybe Margaret disagrees. Maybe she wants us to get involved in the technical side, but I think we at least should be involved on the political side. We
So
are the ones who can sign letters for the towns.
Let me ask you a question then. If what I'm told is correct, is that we won't know when the draft environmental impact report comes out, but we will have a fairly limited time to respond when it does come out. Is it a reasonable thing to just put the draft environmental impact report on our agenda every session until it is actually out? And if all that is happening is it hasn't been come out yet, then it's a very short item. But if
Yeah.
it has come out, then we can discuss it in some more detail.
Yeah, and I would point out that because what is the comment period? Does anybody remember? Is it 30 days or 60 days?
30 days.
30, yeah.
Really, yeah.
So realistically, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to coordinate a joint letter between all of us, but we could at least discuss what the towns are thinking so that if we want to write individual letters, they might have similar themes or similar talking points to reinforce each other.
Okay, so it seems like a reasonable thing to put on every agenda going forward is DEIR.
Yes,
The-
I would
the-
request that.
Right. The next environmental monitor, I believe, is it January 22nd? Is that the date we heard at HVAC? Those of you who, January 22nd is the next time.
So,
Because the clock starts ticking when it gets
Yeah.
published. What?
so,
I
so
didn't write down a date, so I can't confirm.
And I don't have that note with me. Yeah.
let me bring up a slightly different topic, but related, Jim. I'm not familiar with whether the proponents for this air pollution study have actually presented to HATS in the past? Has that occurred in the past?
No.
It
No.
may make some sense to, so I don't know what the rest of the HATS members think, if it would be something you might want to hear about, is what they're proposing to look at and what their assessment of the draft environmental impact report is.
Yeah, so the way we left things at HVAC was Christopher was gonna get in touch with Professor Huda and ask her to put together a proposal, because all of us have voted funding. We're waiting to see if MCAC is also voting funding so this can go forward. But logistically, we're going to need to give something to our finance directors to say, this is what we're doing, this is what we're paying for, this is the purchase order. So we're kind of waiting for more specifics from the professor for, exactly a proposal of what she is going to look at and where. I think we could certainly ask her to present that to HATS as well.
Yeah.
Before she gets started. But we're not quite in a position to schedule that, I don't think. I think the hope is to do it, sooner rather than later. But I don't have any more information than what we had
Okay.
determined on Tuesday at HVAC.
So the other thing that I was thinking about that might make sense to discuss is, I've been told, but I don't have the technical understanding of this, that there are some people who have read the draft environmental impact report scoping document and
Mhm.
can brief us on what is included and what is not included, so that we have some background. So that when this DEIR does come out, we would have had at least some briefing on how to think about it when it does come out. So I don't know if that's something that would make sense to have on an agenda or not. I'm not sure who the right person to present that would be, but I'm wondering, is that something you would like to hear about? What's the assessment of the scoping for this draft environmental impact report?
I'll speak for myself. I have read the scoping document myself, and I've had familiarity from previous DEIRs at Hanscom, so I don't have a big need for that kind of review. But if anybody else does, I certainly support doing something like that, because you are a lot faster at coming up with responses if you are, have refreshed your memory about how all this stuff works and what the issues are.
Emily?
Um,
I'm not sure who
I
would
don't
do
have a
that
problem
here.
revisiting that. I mean, it's been a while since I read it too.
So maybe, Jim, at our next session where we have a DEIR on the agenda, you could just walk us through your understanding of the scoping document. Maybe that's just a simple, I don't know how long that might take, 5 or 10 minutes or longer. I don't know.
Could take as little or as much as you wanted. We could spend an hour on it. We could spend 5 minutes on it,
Okay, let's start with 10 minutes.
Hey,
I'm not
can
sure
I-
I'm the expert. I don't know, Margaret, maybe you have an idea of somebody
No,
who would be better.
Well, there are some people who have read these things thoroughly,
Yeah,
and who do understand them. And Neil Rasmussen in Concord, for example, always is a good source. But I was going to suggest that my understanding is that this study on particulate matter is not covered in the scoping document. Is that right?
Right.
So
Right,
that's
because it doesn't cover
Yes.
airborne emissions, because that's not under mass port control.
right. So that's something. How would those two? How would that study, once it's done, fit? And it won't be done in time. I think the comments on the DEIR are going to be closed before she gets this study done. So I don't know
The intent of the study, I think, was to establish a baseline of like, here's the level of particulate matter in the air now before we build anything new, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about DEIR. Are there other topics that we haven't mentioned yet that we might want to consider putting on a future agenda? Okay, I think that's a reasonable list. So then the next conversation is what should we have for meeting schedule? So my understanding is that we've historically been meeting every other month, but if this DAR is coming out shortly, does that mean we need to think about a different meeting schedule? I defer to my colleagues. Emily, you have any thoughts?
I mean, we used to do what, September, November, February, April, June? By February, we're likely to have something more to talk about. Right?
I was thinking early February, if they really do come out in January with the DEIR, we probably even might want to have it early February
Mhm.
for the February meeting.
Okay,
Do we need to do a schedule for more than the next meeting? Do you want to do 2 meetings? Or
Yeah.
3?
At
Okay.
least, yeah, subject to change.
do we need one in March or do we go to April? What would you suggest?
March is hard because of town meeting, at
Yeah.
least for us. I mean, we're early.
We're
So-
March too, so it's busy for me too.
Yes.
We are
We're-
too.
We're earlier this year than you.
Before you go on to which month, do you have a day of the week that you want to meet?
We've
I mean,
been
we-
doing Thursdays.
Thursdays
That-
is good for me.
Okay,
Thursday night.
it's good for
Any Thursday, or do you have a preference for what part of the month? You're saying early now, so we're,
Yeah. If we're looking at February, I'm currently free on the 1st and the 8th,
okay.
not on the 22nd, possibly on the 15th if it doesn't snow.
And Jim, how do you
Um,
look?
8th works for me. The 1st does not work. So I would ask for Feb 8.
Okay, let me
And
look.
I would second that because Lexington, we've already scheduled our local candidates night for February 15th.
Hmm.
And we do have 2 townwide races already, so it's,
Okay. So the
it's,
8th works for me. How does it work for our non-voting members?
yeah,
Fine.
Gary,
Sounds good.
Amber, Glenn,
I mean,
okay. Terry?
Well, actually, the 8th doesn't work for me, but it's Linda that would need to be here anyway, so
Okay,
go ahead, schedule it, so.
we'll ask Linda then. Okay. So we have Hanscom, we have Massport, we have 3 out of 4 so far of voting members, and I haven't heard any objections from non-voting members. So at least for now, we'll use that as the plan of record. And then perhaps if we're doing early February, we would consider doing early April. And I'm just taking a look here. Early April would be the 4th or the 11th.
Both of
Mhm.
those unfortunately don't work for me. But I could ask
I'm good any Thursday that
another
month.
select board member to fill in. Yeah.
If you want to
Okay.
make it the later ones, Emily, do you want to make it
So
18
The
or
18th
25?
is currently okay. The 25th, I'm not sure about. I have to bring my kid back from school and I'm not sure exactly when.
How about
I'm
April 18?
I'm gonna call a friend on this. So Doug, when is school vacation week?
School vacation is the 18th.
Yeah.
So that might be a tough.
April,
maybe not.
in April, school vacation is, yeah, it's the
Yeah.
week of
15th through the 19th.
The 19th, yeah.
How about 25th?
Yeah, that's when I might be in Pittsburgh and could participate remotely. I might be driving. But we could schedule it and I'll let you know.
Okay, it's a long way away from early February, though. Okay, but it looks like the April 25th is our best date, and we'll revisit in February if the DEIR hasn't come out in February.
How about March 28th instead? most of us should be done with town meeting stuff by then, shouldn't we?
That's Monday, Thursday.
What?
You're not allowed to
That's-
say that out loud, Jim.
I was just
Uh,
gonna say, the whole Lexington contingent is gonna laugh at that one, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
that's also Monday, Thursday, so I would be out.
okay, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, but we got
We-
two
We've
dates that
got, we've got
might work.
February 8th and a tentative April 25th. Any non-voting members have issues with April 25th, Glenn
No.
or,
No issues, thanks.
okay,
Nope, I'm good.
okay. How about non-voting members? How are you, how does April 25th
Yep.
look?
Fine.
Okay, me.
Okay, fantastic. So are there any other topics that we should be talking about before we adjourn tonight?
I'm good.
Okay,
Good.
then I will take a motion to adjourn.
So
moved.
moved.
I'll second Jim. Jim can have it.
So by a roll call vote, Jim,
Hutchinson, I.
Emily,
Aye.
and I am an I, Mark Sandy. And we are adjourned. Thank you so much
Thanks,
for.
everybody. It's good to see you all.
Yes, and thank you,
everybody.
Doug, for sticking
Sorry to
around.
leave.
and,
Thank you, Mark, for
and thank you,
taking
Mark,
over.
for stepping in. Yes.
Okay, and
Yes,
we will
thanks
see
to
you
both.
all on February 8th.
Happy New
Yes.
Year, everybody. Bye.
Yep.
Bye,
Happy
Happy New
holidays.
Year, everyone.
Hey, everyone.